I'm here tonight to give an update on an unprecedented event that we experienced over the last little over a month involving some incidents that occurred at one of our substations and subsequently created some corollary damage that ended up creating an emergency situation that we had to take the most drastic measures that we've ever had to take, which is to reduce the amount of our power consumption, which resulted in emergency outages to a percentage of our customers. The first event, bear with me here, I have this. The first event, or the main event, or the main incident, I should say, occurred at our Rossmoyne Substation, which on July 24th experienced an explosion of an auxiliary transformer. And if you look up on the right of that, you see that circled. Those are the auxiliary transformers, whose function is to provide power to the fans on the left, which are simply there to cool the main transformer. So when you look at the larger, almost looks like a building, that's the main substation transformer. So it's quite a bit different than a transformer that most people may envision or picture, like the cans that are mounted on the poles out on the street. This is a very large, complex transformer. The auxiliary transformer literally exploded, and it sent oil, debris, shrapnel, if you will, throughout the area there. And quite frankly, we had a electrician working at the site at the time. We're very fortunate that he came out of this unscathed. This was the actual a photo of the explosion from a distance that was taken by one of our residents and sent to us. So when we use the term explosion, it's pretty accurate when you look at the situation here. This is what the damage then it caused. The lid of that auxiliary transformer, that small cylinder there, went up into this bank of resistors and damaged them. These are all porcelain devices, and it literally ruined all of these. It broke most of them, as you can see, or have sustained some damage, some complete damage. You see the burns to the device, and you see the burns to the transformer itself. Initial system impacts from this. We have a certain amount of contingency built into the system, what we refer to as an N1. I think you're all probably overly familiar with the term N1 and N-1 from our Grayson discussions, but we build in at least that initial contingency for our system. So we had automatic system protection activated. We were able to get most of our customers up in a relatively short period of time. Some of the ones that were closest to the impacted area took a little bit longer to get up. But other than that, once we had re-energized, had made the repairs to the closers and re-energized the system, it was good to go. And then we proceeded with working on what we were going to do to repair the transformer, because it was one of two transformers at the station that was impacted. We have 13 stations. And of the 13 stations, this particular station provides power to four total stations. And we have, of those 13 stations, there's 116 circuits, and there were 32 circuits involved in here, and approximately 25% of our customer base was impacted by this. So the other substations that were impacted were Scholl, were Fremont, Howard, and Rossmoyne itself. So the second transformer at the station picked up the load, and we were able to go through a lot of switching procedures and be able to relieve the system. As you recall, it had not quite gotten real warm yet, but we were anticipating some warmer weather coming up. Even with the warmer weather and our contingency plan in place, we didn't expect to have a real serious problem until we had the secondary failure, some of the corollary damage. And that was where we had a cable failure at our Scholl substation. When we investigated this initially, we had first the cable failure on the 30th. We replaced that cable and it failed again on the 3rd. When we came back out to look at this, we found a couple of things that we didn't initially see when we went to the substation. The cable failures themselves created system strain, took away that contingency we had. We didn't have an N1-1 in this particular case, so we didn't have that double backup for this particular set of substations. Again, the system impact, high heat and lossless transmission line, overloaded the lone power transformer at the Rossmoyne station that we had operating. It was critical that we protect that transformer. If we were to have lost that transformer, it likely would have affected a greater than 50%, probably closer to 60% of the city, and we would have had to then replace the transformer, and that would have taken a substantial amount of time. So at all efforts and all costs, we wanted to maintain and protect that one transformer. And then on September 4th, we received the high heat alarm for that remaining transformer, and that it had reached a emergency situation. The overload was dangerous. And so then we began the load shedding procedures. That's where we started the emergency outage rotations. The emergency outages were conducted at the Rossmoyne, Fremont, Scholl, and Howard substation service areas. They were on a rotating basis for 1 hour each, and they were initiated, as I said, to protect the lone transformer at Rossmoyne. Generally, the outages lasted from the early afternoon into the evening, where we got a load drop, usage went down, and the temperatures cooled somewhat. The outages were limited to those areas that I had mentioned. And again, about a little over 25% of our customers were impacted. Expanded outages would not have helped. So there was some question about what if we would have rotated throughout the city? Would that have had some impact? It wouldn't, because this was very much isolated to that transformer and then those substations. The emergency outages ceased once the transmission line, which was those failed cables, were repaired on September 8th, and I'll get to a little more detail on that repair. And the initial cycle of outages happened within minutes of operations notification. So when we got that emergency alarm, we initiated the outages immediately. So there's a lot of talk about why we didn't have more notification, or why there was not a longer period. We didn't want to call an outage that we didn't think was going to happen. In this particular case, once the alarm did go off, and that was because we had the failed cable, we then began the operation, the emergency operations, to bring down the amperage on that transformer and cool it so that we would not cause further damage. The notification processes we used all those were available to us: social media, the websites of both GWP and the city. We sent out notifications via GTV6. We had a call center established during work hours, and we also kept the call center open after on the weekend and after hours. We continued day 2 and 3 notifications, and then we brought in for the weekend our Everbridge system, the reverse 911 system, where we called folks up and continued to try to push information out as best we could through those mediums. The cable repair. So let's go back to the damaged substation. We immediately brought in the City of Los Angeles. The City of Glendale doesn't have a repair department for that level of transformer. Those are things that we would either usually have replaced through a regular upgrade process that happens. I'll give you an idea. The 2 substations that we've most recently upgraded were probably both built in the 30s. So that gives you an idea of how long the transformers last. We hadn't had any problems, but that's the point when we then put in new transformers, and we'll expand it and add an N1-1 if we can. So that substation, the City of Los Angeles immediately responded to us, and we're extremely grateful to them. They came out, they conducted the inspections, looked at all of the related appurtenances to the substation, and determined that the actual transformer itself was structurally intact. It had not been damaged to the point that it would need to be replaced. It could be repaired in place. It required that we buy special parts, bushings that are in there. Those bushings are manufactured to our order. So when we ordered those, almost immediately that we got the analysis back from LA, we put that order in. The bushings then were the manufacturing of those bushings started. That manufacturing process has been completed, and the bushings have been shipped to us. This takes place, the company that does this is located in Canada. So we had made the call to see if we could come and pick them up. Unfortunately, that was a little further than we had anticipated for a drive-through. I had a couple employees that were more than willing to take that trip, but we decided to have it sent. Those bushings are expected to arrive tomorrow.
How is it sent? Air freight or by truck?
By truck. We've been back in contact with the City of Los Angeles, come through and gone back over the repair schedule. Right now, we're trying to work through. We did this on a mutual aid basis, but the City of Los Angeles has some concerns, as you would imagine, on risk management. So we're trying to work through those now. So either the City of Los Angeles will make the repairs for us, or they will oversee our staff make the repairs as advisors. Either way, they're going to be a tremendous help, and then that way we don't have to go out to bid, bring in a contractor, and all of that time that would take to do that. They also have the equipment to take the oil. There's about 30,000 gallons of specialized oil that are in the transformers. They have a vehicle that oil is pumped out to. It's filtered and then it's pumped back into the transformer once the repairs are complete. All of this goes as planned. We should have this project completed within 2 weeks and the transformer back online. So we're very optimistic, and again, very thankful to the City of Los Angeles for their assistance. As it relates, so that was a longer term repair. The more immediate need was for us to get the N1, the contingency part of this plan, and repair that. So we went out this last Saturday with a repair scenario to install an additional smaller cable that would help pick up the load and relieve the pressure on the system. When we got out to the site, our crews pulled the cable out, the existing cable, and found that this was not the cable that had been reported damaged and had not tripped, as they say. It was the second cable that had no indication of damage. It too had retained heat, and the casing had melted. We then pulled the third cable out. It too had experienced some level of damage. Yes, ma'am.
Was that the new cable that was just put in June?
Yes, I should have. Thank you, Mrs. Vine. I should have prefaced by that cable had been installed in June of this year. So it was less than a month old when the accident occurred, and so it was an old cable. It wasn't something that was installed in 20 years ago. It was brand new. What we ascertained is that the cable, we placed the cable, installed the cable in 3 individual conduits. They were rigid metallic conduits. That installation procedure created, because of the single cable in a metallic conduit, created an electromagnetic field that was greatly exacerbated when the explosion occurred and the surge went through the system. We then, because that one transformer at Rossmoyne was down, we transferred more load through those cables. That increased the heat ratio, and we think accelerated the melting. Now, the wire itself did not melt, but the casing and the insulation melted, and it melted to the conduit. So there was a tremendous amount of heat. At about 10 o'clock on Saturday, when I got that call that they had found that damaged cable, you can imagine my heart sunk as about as low as I thought it had already gone as low as it could go, but it went lower. But our engineers who came to the site and with our field staff quickly came up with an alternative plan. We would simply extract all of the cable, get new cable. We would combine all 3 strands into a single conduit, thus eliminating the heat the heat that would be conducted in that by literally taking up the space, and then energizing that line, and then now create our contingency for the future. The crews came out at 6 a.m. on Saturday. They finished that job at 5 a.m. on Sunday. They took 1 2-hour break. By law, they have to take a break after 18 hours. The same crew, the same 6 men did this. I also want to give, and I'll show you a picture. There they are with the new cable, and you'll see, if you can see the picture to the left, you can see there are 3 cable spools there, each with the run of cable. The inset picture shows the cables being put into the conduit, and they use that device to make sure that the cables do not bunch. But I need to say something. That cable came from the city of Burbank. Burbank Water and Power sold us that cable. They didn't give it to us. They sold us that cable, and they did it without hesitation. Otherwise, we would have had to order that cable because we had used all of ours to make repairs following the explosion. So we went over to Burbank, picked that up, brought it over, and were able to make the repair. And as I said, by Sunday we were good. We ended the outages, and everything has held since that time with no indication that there's any further issue. On This is just a reliability history. The city of Glendale takes a lot of pride in the fact that when you look at, these are the 3 national indicators that are used to rate a utility's effectiveness when it comes to outages, both the number of outages and the duration of those outages. And you can see that this is from the period of July 1 to June 30th, July 1, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. That's a 1 fiscal year. When you look at all utilities, which includes both public and investor-owned utilities, then the second column is just publicly owned utilities. The third column being Glendale, you can see that we rate very high as far as our ability to contain outages and to contain both incidents and duration. That is an indication, I will tell you, of a solid infrastructure. That doesn't happen by chance. It happens because you have a sound infrastructure and you have a good repair program. Could we do more? Absolutely. Absolutely. If currently we spend on last 4 years on average about $13 million a year on maintenance. We've been ramping that number up. There are some things that all utilities struggle with, and that's the age of their basic infrastructure, poles and transformers. We've been focusing on transformers and trying to get those up. I'd like to go through the more aggressive pole replacement program, which we're looking at right now. Part of our issue is just simply the labor pool that we have. So we're going to have to sit down and look going forward when we do our master plan and then tie that into our new 5 and 10-year capital projections, how much staff we're going to need. This is a difficult business in that the staff that conducts this work has to be a journeyman electrician, and it takes you 4 years to become a journeyman electrician. So we'll have to get people in through an apprentice program. But this is the time to talk about it, and we're going to do that to ensure that we are keeping up to speed with our replacements. We have been doing a good job. Doing more certainly is something that we would aspire to do. Again, an unprecedented incident, something that we don't even have a recorded history of anything like this happening. The tribal memory of the men and women who work for me, some for more than 35 years, never seen anything like this. Our friends in Burbank, we went over to Burbank today to give them an overview of what happened. Their general manager, or assistant general manager, sent a note back, said you could hear a pin drop. Their people had never seen anything like this. My note to them was, whatever you can do, do it, because you don't ever want to go through this. It's regrettable. We apologize to our customers for the inconvenience and the interruption to their life. And I want to compliment the vast majority of our residents who were affected by this. We're very patient and understanding and supportive of the efforts that we were putting forth. One thing I didn't mention was on that September 3rd date, when the second cable failed, was also a date that we had a pole break out in Pacific, actually a single pole that carried 2 other poles with it. All of our staff worked for 36 hours to get that job done, right when this happened as well. So again, we had stretched our forces about as far as we could, but they responded as they always do. Like, it's amazing. I've never seen anything like it. And so we were extremely fortunate to get this done. I know that some folks will say we didn't get it done soon enough, and I can understand the frustration. And we will take this as a lesson to make any improvement we can. Certainly, we will get the substation repaired. Our engineers have looked at a couple of different things that we might do for the future, some devices that we can install that would help mitigate the scope, hopefully prevent the cascading effect that occurred when the station exploded. We're looking at upgrading a line over the hills from central Glendale to the Montrose La Crescenta area, which should be rather easy. So put a 69 kV line across there to help us transfer power a little bit more effectively. You saw the configuration of that substation. Like, go back there, where the transformers were situated where they are to the smaller circle to the right. We're going to relocate all of those to a different area. Never had there been any experience with a lid coming off and going into the resistor bank there. It was, if the lid had gone the other way, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this at all. It was just that kind of, I hate to use the term, but it was in fact almost the perfect storm of events. So we're going to relocate those, and the long-term solution that we're also going to look at, and one we've been looking at, is the addition of a substation at the Fairmont, which is our yard, the UOC. So it would be a new substation there. We'd originally included it as part of the Grayson repower plan. Whatever the Grayson repower plan ends up being, we will still pursue this. It's a long-term, expensive endeavor, but one we want to pursue to add additional redundancy and contingency to the system. As far as the outreach goes, we learned some things obviously there as well. I think that we would utilize the Everbridge reverse 911 system a little differently, probably a little earlier. We have an outage management system that we've been implementing for the last year. It has a lot of different features to it. We're going to see what features we can implement that will help, at least from a notification process where you can go online and see more specific details. I think the letter that we sent out, and I'll go back through this letter that we sent out yesterday to our residents. I know we got a lot of good feedback from the standpoint of it was good for us to get details on what happened. I waited to send that until we had confirmed what the fix was and to make sure it was holding. Suggestions that maybe we do that earlier, or at least do it in phases. So we'll tell you what we know at the time we know it, and give you as much information as we can with as much information about what the forecast is, and that may help as well. And we will continue to sit down and look at opportunities that we can to improve our outreach and communication. My hope is we never have to do this again. But as you all know, we have shorter outages that occur. The bane of the Mylar balloon haunts us. And that's another issue we're looking into, is the potential to replace all of our overhead wire with encased wire. Again, I think it's a good move, especially with wildfire issues now becoming an issue or becoming of concern. But it's expensive, and it requires different engineering because of the load. The wire's heavier. But I think it's something in the long run, when over 30% of your outages are from Mylar balloons and another 10% from tree branches, I think it makes sense. So with that, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Zurn. And so you said it, and I want to say it again, that I and the council collectively apologize for any inconvenience that any of our residents experienced and suffered over the last 6 days, as well as during the July outage, which, as my son reminds me, was 1 week before the bar exam, and it caused a little bit of concern. This is not what we expect. However, this was an unforeseen and unprecedented event. That's no excuse. As Mr. Zurn said, we're working on backups and redundancies in many different areas to stop this from happening. I appreciate all the emails I got, even the ones with the obscenities and the profanities and the comparisons to Venezuela and other third world countries. I can't say, I'm blaming you. I was not personally affected, but I can imagine what it was like to lose power suddenly during that heat wave, disrupting your lives. We hope it won't happen again, and we're going to strive for that. Mr. Agajanian.
I have lots of questions, but I know we don't have time. So I want to ask you in brief, what was the reason? Old equipment, old wiring, electric surge, too much load? What was the reason first? Think about it. And the second question is, tomorrow the weather will be okay. Thursday will get hot. Friday, hotter. And on Saturday will be very hot. So what do you expect? Everything is okay? We can tolerate this situation, or what will happen?
So Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Agajanian, your first question was the failure of the one auxiliary transformer at the Rossmoyne Substation, which again, there is no rhyme or reason why it happened. It happened. It created a lot of corollary damage beyond what anything we could imagine. There was, other than that, it wasn't because it was old or because it wasn't maintained. It was, we don't know if it was defective. We'll continue to look at it, but it broke. It broke.
It sounds reasonable.
And on your second question, that cable fix that we made, which we have been monitoring, as you can imagine, very closely since last Sunday, that's the contingency which would get us through the heat. The single transformer being out, we can cover that. The transformer with the failed cable is where we ran into trouble. And that cable configuration that the staff came up with and the fact that it's working, we fully anticipate that that'll get us through the heat. I anticipate being September, what September is in October, that we will have more heat, and hopefully by then we'll have that second transformer fixed within 2 weeks, and we'll have our system back to full capacity.
Thank you.
Ms. Devine.
Well, I guess we all received the same emails. So I just wanted to ask about, two questions, because Mr. Agajanian, I think, just had the first one of them answered. These are questions that came from the public. And the first one was this because the infrastructure was old and we haven't been taking care of it, we haven't been keeping up with it, et cetera? Was that part of the reason, or was that the reason?
No, ma'am,
Okay.
that was not.
All right, number two. Someone else said this has happened so many times in the last 10 years, they're getting sick of it. Has it happened a lot of times in the last 10 years, an incident like this?
Ma'am, this is unprecedented. I can't even find a file report in GWP that says that it happened 20, 40, 60 years ago. Not to anyone's knowledge.
I know we have the temporary or the sudden, like when a squirrel gets on the wires and burns to a crisp, or Mylar balloons, and the crews are out there right away and get it all settled.
Yes, ma'am.
My final question is, and this was another comment that was made, that it all happened because we have too many apartments.
Let the gentleman answer.
I'm asking for you. I'm asking for you. Is that why?
No, ma'am. This question ironically came up when we had water conservation, if you remember too. Was that the reason? No. Our supply and distribution system is more than able to take care of our city as it is and the expansion that occurred. Keep in mind, from an electrical standpoint, when you talk about new development, that's oftentimes much more energy efficient than old. So when you talk about coming in, we've actually seen load decrease. So if you remember on some of our energy projections, we had a very modest energy increase. We, in fact, were experiencing decreases in our load demand, even though construction was going up. First of all, a lot of that construction replaced something else. And a lot of the new construction is much more energy efficient. That's not the reason. That's not the reason this occurred.
Thank you.
I just want to thank everyone at GWP for working really hard. These things happen. It was an unfortunate incident. But the way you attack the problem and solve the problem, I want to thank Burbank as well for lending us or selling us or what have you the cables that we needed at that time. It's very important. Otherwise, we couldn't have gotten this job done on a timely manner. I think this is why having a reliable source of energy is very important. I think having an infrastructure that is upgraded and it's up and running is very important. So the city is really working hard to provide the basic services to all the residents. And the fact that you shut down the power in different neighborhoods 1 hour at a time, so not the whole thing would be burdened, one neighborhood would be burdened by it, that's a very good way of managing this problem. So with that, all the crews that worked tirelessly, I want to thank them as well, because they're always behind the scene. We don't see them. They don't come here. We don't usually, they're not out there for public to see, but they do a tremendous work, and I appreciate everything that. Thank you.
Mr. Quintero.
Yeah, just so it's clear to the audience members and anyone watching. So why don't you physically describe where this substation is located and the neighborhoods that it feeds? It obviously doesn't feed any of the neighborhoods or commercial district here on Brand.
So these are the maps of the 3 stations. And I'm sorry, with my glasses I can't even see, but if that gives you an idea of the neighborhoods. And Mark, if you might help me, because you're more familiar with the map. Okay, his glasses aren't any better. So you'll have to use the microphone if you're gonna. So this is
Just describing the neighborhoods, is that?
well the boundaries of the neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously Chevy Chase or the Northwest, I mean, there's a number of neighborhoods that weren't affected at all.
Correct.
It's
Most of
pretty much
Northwest
that.
wasn't affected. Chevy Chase Canyon, obviously, the southern part of Glendale, the industrial corridor along San Fernando Road. Central Glendale was impacted when we invoked Howard Substation. So again, you're talking about roughly a quarter of our total customer load. For those, and these, forgive me, these color maps are each of the 3 substations that we were utilizing, and it's pretty concentrated. We have a lot of homes connected to individual circuits. That's just the way the system was built, and so sometimes you'll see utilities may have less circuits, so that sometimes is beneficial to the point we can, with new substations, build that in. We will look at that as well.
In other substations similar to Rossmoyne, they are in approximately the same condition in terms of new and old and...
Yeah, Mr. Quintero, Grandview Substation and Glorietta Substation have been completely rebuilt both within the last 12 years. So those are 2 brand new stations. They're the existing station that we just upgraded the equipment. We also expanded those, so they have the ability to, at Grandview, our last substation, we can set another transformer there. So we built that N1-1 into that facility, and we used, in that case, a gas-insulated system, and that made it a lot more efficient. Glorietta was very similar to that as well. The rest of the substations are in good condition, but we think our efforts would better be set. We can do some cable reconfiguring and switching on the stations to make them perform a little better. We think that our direction should be 1 more additional station that we can then use to balance load, and that station we would propose be at the yard, at the UOC.
And that line you talked about to the north, that would feed to the Rossmoyne station, right?
Well, it would allow us to take central Glendale and be more efficient in transferring it over into the north, where we might need to spread some of the load if we were into a stressful situation. It gives us more flexibility. It doesn't cut that portion of the city off and allows us to utilize like Scholl and some of Montrose Substation and the other facilities in the north. It's a relatively easy fix, but one that gives, again, us more flexibility. No one of these is the end-all, but all of them together can give us a lot more options to deal with a situation when it occurs.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. We've sort of mentioned support for the GWP workers, but these are IBEW brothers, are we not correct on that?
You are correct.
Okay, so although we've sometimes gone through some negotiation issues with them, when we really needed their expertise and their long hours, they came through for us.
Always. They have never hesitated.
So I do want to give them a shout out too. Thank you very much.